Embarrassment lasts a day, resentment lasts a lifetime. Now, I was watching TV the other day and that quote came into my head. Now, I wasn't thinking about anything in particular. I wasn't thinking about being embarrassed about anything, and I wasn't thinking about having any resents about anything recently, but that quote came into my head fully formed. Now, I don't know where my brain pulled that content from, whether it was piecing together stuff I'd seen in a TV show or in a book or something like that, and that's where it had come from, but that quote came into my head fully formed. Now again, it could be a knockoff, it could be a spin-off of somebody else's, I'm not too sure, so I'm not taking ownership for it, but that quote anyway came into my head. Now, as I was saying to my email list yesterday, I do know where the resentment bit has come from. Now, many years ago, probably going back maybe 20 years now, I feel like an old fart sometimes when I actually have to say that, but I used to work with a man called James. Now, me and James were one of those people who, we became good friends. He started work in the factory that I used to work in, and at the time we used to work in a mould shop. So we used to do the late shift, and we used to make computer parts, plastic computer parts at night. So James was over quality and I used to run the shift. So we became good friends. We used to drink out on many a Saturday night after work, and at one stage we went on holidays together. Even with my future wife, we went together on holidays, a big gang of us together. It was one of the best holidays I've ever had, because so many things went wrong on it, and because of that it stands out so much in my mind. But it was a wonderful holiday. Now, what happens with most factories, things change, there's layoffs and all those different things, but the factory closed down and we were all laid off, and we all kind of went our separate ways. Now, I hadn't seen James in years, but him and me we had the type of relationship, even if we hadn't met in a couple of years, if I met him in a bar or whatever, we could kind of strike up the last conversation we had and we could begin from where we had left off, even though there was a huge gap of years since the last time I'd seen it. Those kind of relationships, maybe you have one of those yourself. But anyway, I was at a disco a couple of years after the factory had closed, and one of the guys that used to work there told me that James had cancer and that he hadn't got long to live. Now, that really was a punch in the guts for me, and I actually had to sit down because I was so shocked by it. So when I went home that night, I told Catherine about it, and again she couldn't believe it too, because she had known James as well, because again we'd been out in many a night together, and she kept saying to me, "Barry, you're going to have to go and see him." Now, unfortunately, I am probably one of those people who puts things on the long finger. I kept saying yes, I'll get to that next week, I'll do that soon, I'll get to see him before, and it came to a stage that some of my other friends that I'd worked in the factory with, they had been to see him, and they had said to me, well, maybe you should go soon because I don't think he's going to last too long. And again, came to the stage where I, could have gone to see him, but I chickened out. For whatever reason, I chickened out. Maybe I just didn't want to see him in the condition he was in. Maybe I just wanted to remember him the way he was, or maybe I just couldn't face up the fact that he was actually going to die, and I was going to live on. So I couldn't do it. I chickened out, and of course eventually James died and I didn't get to see him. Now, when I went to his funeral a couple of days later, I was talking to his partner at the time, and I really apologised to her. I said, "I'm just really sorry, I really wanted to go, but I just couldn't do it." And his partner at the time said, well, yeah, she totally understood. James understood as well. But for the weeks and months after that, I lived with a huge regret over that decision I'd made. Why didn't I go and see him? He was this friend of mine who was looking for a laugh, and at his last moments I chickened out. I was a coward. I called myself many, many things because I didn't go and see him, and to this day I still regret that decision. Now, if I had a time machine, that would be one of the moments I would go back in time to fix, would be to get the courage up and to actually go and see him before he passed away. So why am I talking about this? Well, as you can probably tell, resentment lasts a long time. If I had got over my embarrassment of showing up, maybe being embarrassed by the state he was in, or embarrassed by whatever was going on in my head, if I had got over that moment of embarrassment, I wouldn't have the regret that I have now in my life, and it's something I'll never ever be able to change. Now, you might say, well, I'm being hard on myself, forgive yourself, you did the best you could back then, and that is true, and over the years it has kind of faded away. But sometimes, like standing on a thumbtack or a Lego brick or something like that, sometimes it just comes back to you, and sometimes it does hurt as much as back then. So what I'm trying to get at in this podcast episode is, whatever you're looking to do, I don't want you to look back on your life with any regrets. Now, the person who says on the deathbed that they have no regrets in life is either a liar or hasn't, been honest with themselves and done the things that they wanted to do. So I don't want you to look back on your life with regrets. I want you to get the courage up to be a great writer, or start writing books, and I want you to get the courage up to create a training course to make a difference in someone's life. I want you to blog, I want you to make videos, I want you to podcast, I want you to do all those different things that you are holding yourself back with, because as I said, embarrassment lasts a day, resentment lasts a lifetime, and there will come a time when you will look back and you will curse yourself, you'll kick yourself for not being courageous enough, for taking that opportunity to create that podcast, to write that book that's been in your head, to create those videos, to get that knowledge out of your head and into a training course so you can leave something behind you that you can make a big difference in people's lives. So I'm trying to point that out to you. As I said, I'll never be able to get that moment back, and it still does hurt me. Even 20 years later, I could probably cry sometimes, because I'm so angry with myself for being so stupid at the time and being so childish and coward and all those different things. Now you can put sweet words at the bottom of this video, you can leave some comments, but it's not going to change how I feel inside. So I want you to think about that today. Is it better to face up to a couple of days of embarrassing yourself, like embarrassing yourself on camera, embarrassing yourself on paper and podcast episodes or whatever? Is it worth doing that to know that you have done what you wanted to do, or is it better to live the rest of your life with regret? So give that some thought today. If maybe I've helped somebody stop making a stupid mistake that I made back in the past, well, then this podcast episode has been well worth it. And again, as always, if you want to find more of this great content, maybe sometimes let a little bit of a sob story, if you do a search for WriteCome, WriteCome.com, you'll find the content all over the web. And if you go to the WriteCome site right now, we have a couple of great free reports, and one of them is called Words to Wealth, and you can download that from the site. Or if you're watching these on YouTube, or you're listening to this as a podcast episode, why not hit the subscribe button, and I will send the next couple of episodes directly to you. So as always, have a great day, but live a life without regrets. Take care. Bye bye.